Did you ever consider a cinema career and then come?
I was always studious, curious. I spent more years in college education. I got 4 degrees in 4 different majors. All of a sudden, the parent company filed bankruptcy. I went to bed on Sunday night thinking that Lehman was going to be sold to Barclays. And now, the minute I got that call, my hands and legs wouldn't work, and I couldn't get up out of my seat. The Prime Minister and the senior leadership of the Union government, they are exceptional politicians. They are genius at using every tool in the box, whether legal, semi-legal, borderline illegal, outright unprecedented, anti-constitutional. They are brilliant at achieving outcomes in electoral kind of battles.
ഈ മഹാരാജ്യത്തിലെ ഒരു ചെറിയ വിഭാഗം ജനങ്ങൾ മാത്രം സംസാരിക്കുന്നതാണ് എൻ്റെ ഭാഷ. പക്ഷേ ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഭാഷ സജീവമാണ്, ചലനാത്മകമാണ്.
Your wife is from a different country, and how has her process of adjustment been?
My wife?
Yeah.
My wife came from a very different background, very different lifestyle, not just country. She's from a village of about 800 people in a rural part of New York State. So I think it was an adjustment for her in many ways. But, we met in university where she was getting a master's degree. So she had quite exposure to education. She had a very successful career as an engineer or engineering manager. And we had traveled quite a bit before we came back to settle in India, both to India and around the world, maybe 30 or 40 countries. So she had a very global outlook by then. But I think she came here with the expectation that we were going to do public service. And therefore, it was the greater calling. And so she'd adapt. So I must say it was a bit difficult in the early days, because the quality of infrastructure, the quality of services in India was substantially different, not just to the rest of the world, but different to where it is today. India has accelerated dramatically in the 17 or 18 years since we came back. So it was harder in the early days. Now it's a lot easier, partly because she's more used to it, partly because access to services, access to goods, India has become more integrated into the global economy, and things like internet and all that have come to global standards. So now it's easier. Yeah.
So do you think that a person who's a politician or who's in public service, would education aid them be of better service? Do you think that should be like a basic?
Well, I'll answer it 2 ways. I have a lot of, I spent more years in college education, college level education than most people. I got 4 degrees in 4 different majors. And I've often said, even I didn't even forget public service. When I went to Wall Street, I told my boss jokingly, because I went to work in a field called credit derivatives. It was very math oriented. And I joked to him, when he said, "Oh, you're one of the more educated people we've seen." I said, "Yeah, but really everything I need to do my job, I learned in high school, because it's just math, and I learned to do that." It was joking, right? Because just to run the spreadsheet, yes, I knew that. But at some other level, I would say education can never be of zero value or of negative value. So the more you learn, the more you assimilate. And it can be formal education, it can be exposure to the world, it can be exposure to different cultures, to different mores, to different incidents. I think your life's journey, education, work experience, exposure, events, all of it adds value to who you are as a human being, and therefore to what you do in any given role. So at some level, broadly, I would say, of course, it can't hurt to be well educated. At some other level, and I've said this before, to me, the most important characteristic or even yardstick for a politician is the connectedness to the people, right? The empathy, the closeness, the understanding of their issues, the extent to which you take their ambitions and their aspirations as your own, the extent to which you use those feelings to shape every action, every policy decision, every program. I think to me, empathy and connectedness to people is a far more important attribute on which to say whether somebody can be a successful or less successful politician than education. Education always helps, but I think empathy is most important. Followed closely, I would say, as I've said in many cases, by the ability to achieve outcomes. A lot of people talk, right? A lot of people do rhetoric. But if you are somebody who's focused on actually delivering outcomes and holding yourself accountable, well, of course it can be taught, of course it can be learnt. But there are different kinds of outcomes for different kinds of people, right? If you take the Prime Minister and the senior leadership of the Union government, they are exceptional politicians. Near genius at using every tool in the box, whether legal, semi-legal, borderline illegal, outright unprecedented, anti-constitutional. They are brilliant at achieving outcomes in electoral kind of battles. I would suggest that their track record in achieving outcomes in administration, in uplift, in the improvement in people's quality of lives, or in having a robust and healthy democracy has been suboptimal, right? Far below not just their ability in the political space, but also below other governments, including, let's say, the government of the BJP led by Vajpayee back, many years ago. So different people focus on different benchmarks. I'm less worried about electoral victories. I'm more worried about things like GDP or quality of schooling or efficacy of a social welfare program or inclusion of true beneficiaries or avoidance of unnecessary spending. I worry about those things as my deliverables. That's much harder to do.
What do you think especially for your people at this moment, what do you think is the most pressing need that you personally feel you have to work towards or that you can make a difference in?
I think that the greatest threat to our democracy, to any democracy around the world, and I would say that the notion of democracy is taking a beating in many parts of the world. If you take the US, a lot of things which were very clearly against the Constitution have happened. You take the UK, that has happened. During the crisis, a lot of people did a lot of very authoritarian or biased things or applied different yardsticks to different people. So somewhere between the natural kind of increase in inequality, which I think is the root cause of all this, and the pandemic or the global financial crisis that accelerated or exacerbated these gaps. We are now in a position where the outcomes are getting more and more unequal, whether that's country to country, state to state, or within any community or within any country, people to people. And I think the pressing need of the hour, not just to make it a more equitable society from a moral perspective, but to reinforce that democracy is a working model, is to reduce this gap, is to find a way to uplift those people that have fallen so far behind and raise enough revenues for the government from those people who are capable of paying. Both of these, the governments have failed around the world. The state's revenues as a percentage of GDP or as a percentage of the economy all around the world have dropped. And therefore the state is less empowered to do things for the public good or for the bottom of the pyramid. So both ends have to be improved dramatically. That is what I would say I try to do in my old role and in my current role in different ways, to improve the revenues of the state, to make it a more viable entity and a more ambitious entity, and then to execute those programs that lifted the bottom of the pyramid in their life by better benefits, by better housing, by better nutrition, by better education.
Other than for the roots that you have in politics, what made you feel like you want to come serve the public?
To be honest, I think mostly my legacy.
Yeah.
Mostly that, I had a very good life. But I said the first day I came in 2016, I said I've come to politics for three reasons. One is that I owe it to my forefathers who gave me such a good start in life to come and do what they would have wanted me to do. The second is to feel like my life meant something for people beyond myself and my own family. And therefore, I feel like I contributed back to the system and redeem my own privileged background. And lastly, I believe that my life turned out so well because of the good deeds and goodwill generated by my forefathers. And I wanted to invest my own time and effort into generating more good deeds and more goodwill for the benefit of my children because I'm a believer in those kinds of things. So I wanted to do that.
Did you ever consider a cinema career and then come? Because that is a route.
I'm not either talented enough or attractive enough to go to the movies. So I've stayed where I
That
am.
is for the people, Tamil people to say.
No. I never had an ambition. Never even contemplated it. Yeah. I was a bit of a nerd always at school. I was a happy guy. I'm an extrovert by nature. I have a lot of friends. But I was always studious, curious, kind of focused individual. Oh no, not focused on that way. Focused on learning.
Yeah.
Learning in the broadest sense of learning. Always asking questions. Always understanding the world better. Not so much. I mean, it turned out I got a lot of degrees, but that was an outcome of my nature rather than the other way around. It wasn't the degrees that shaped my nature. It was my nature that made me go for those degrees. Yeah.
When you were a young kid, what were you most curious about in life?
No, I don't think that has changed even today, right? I want to understand more about myself, more about what I am capable of, more about what my values are. I do a lot of introspection. I've said it to many young people that a lot of time you spend thinking ahead of time makes you act quickly when you don't have time to really think. When some crisis or some situation arises, if you've already spent a lot of time thinking about who you are and what is important to you, you can act quickly, and that is a very valuable asset to have, right? I'll give you an example in a minute. But I think the second part is that I've always wanted to understand people, of course, at a societal level. But if I sit with you for an hour, I'm intensely curious. What were the events that defined your life? How did you turn out to be where you are today? Or what is it that you think, and why do you think that way? And that's my, it's about myself. It's about every other person I meet, and it's about the community or society. How is this acceptable in the society, and that is not? What is the basis for these things? But I'll give you an example of where I think it helped a lot. I was with Lehman Brothers in the US for most of my career, but towards the end, because my father passed away and I couldn't afford to leave my mother alone, I'm an only child, I moved back to India. I went to Lehman and I resigned, and they said, don't resign, go and set up and run something for us in India. So I came back, and about a year and a half after, or maybe 2 years after I came back, Lehman filed bankruptcy. It filed bankruptcy on a Sunday night in New York, which was Monday morning around 9:30 in Bombay, where I was running these big entities. I was only Indian resident director of two corporate entities where we had hundreds of employees, many of them IIT, IIM graduates. And all of a sudden, the parent company filed bankruptcy, right? I went to bed on Sunday night thinking that Lehman was going to be sold to Barclays and everything was going to be fine. Because that way, it was a professional firm. Everybody kept updating everybody else. They had a list of subsidiaries and directors, so they knew how to convey information. And so I went, I slept well, I got up, I came to the office. And around 9:30, I got a call from the General Counsel's office in New York saying that the Barclays deal fell through because the British regulators refused to allow Barclays to buy Lehman without calling actually a shareholder meeting. They didn't want the risk. They were finding a way to not take the risk. And so the trade was closed, and effectively the regulators had told Lehman, file for what is called Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Chapter 7 bankruptcy means liquidation. Right? And now, the minute I got that call, my hands and legs wouldn't work, and I couldn't get up out of my seat because I had been at Lehman in the heart of the derivative and securitization and financial engineering machine. And I knew enough to know that had Lehman filed for liquidation that day, the world as I knew it would not continue to exist anymore, because there was so much intertwined risk and so much. Lehman had trillions of dollars of notional risk, where we knew the counterparties. I was long with X and I was short with Y. But if I disappeared, neither this party nor that party knew how to net the trade out, you see. So I would just sow chaos in the system. If Lehman disappeared, liquidated overnight, it would just lead to complete breakdown of the world of finance as we know it, and therefore the world as we know it, right? So literally, I couldn't get up out of my seat because I couldn't contemplate what a world would look like. I was paralyzed, right? About X minutes later, I don't remember what that was, 20, 30 minutes, I got a call, and the guy was swearing up and down, and he said, the so-and-so has finally realized what they were talking about, and they said, file Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is restructuring at the holdco, and all the entities that can continue to exist or have enough liquidity to go through without liquidation can do so and get an orderly exit. That contingency, the first contingency, even I had no idea what to do about it. I am a thoughtful guy, I'm an educated guy, I was frozen. The minute the second contingency came, immediately I went into action, right? Immediately I went out to the trading floor, called everybody, stood on top of the desk. I said, many of you I recruited personally, you're all brilliant, you're going to have great careers. I don't know what to tell you. I didn't ask you to take a risk I wasn't taking. I myself am with the firm. But now I'm telling you, I don't know what's going to happen. But I will guarantee two things. One, as long as all of you stay and you don't start leaving individually, then I will stay and take care of you. Because if you start leaving individually, all the best talent will go out the door. It's called adverse selection in game theory. And the rest will not be sellable to anybody else, right? If the best take their individual trades. So I said, if you all commit to stay, I commit to stay. And I will make sure that I find future careers for all of you, every one of you. Ideally as a whole, if not individually or in teams or in groups. So securitization guys go here, research guys go there, risk managers go here. I will make sure that all of you are taken care of, even if it means that at the end of taking care of all of you, I have to turn the lights off in the building and leave. I will be the last guy to leave. It took me like 10 minutes between hearing that we had liquidation and making that. That I had already, I knew in my heart who I was. I didn't need to think, right? Now the irony is that within like 3 hours of that call, I got an offer from a big European bank saying, hey, we've been meaning to ask you to come be CEO of our unit, equivalent unit, because our CEO and our chairman are both leaving. And we didn't know how to poach you because we thought you're a true blue Lehman loyalist. But if Lehman's going bankrupt, surely then you're in the market. And then like 8 hours later, I got a call from a second bank. And then the next day I got a call from a third bank. And to all of them I said, listen, I just committed that I'm here to take care of my people. So I'm happy to talk to you, but first I got to take care of my people. And then I'm going to consider my own career. Some of them were very disciplined about it. They said, fine, after the resolution of the bankruptcy, then you come to me. One of them was very aggressive. And they said, you have to start interviewing now, but you don't have to accept the offer till after. In India, everybody knows everything. There are no secrets. So when I started going to do VC interviews, I'm saying in 2008, with London, with Hong Kong, the word started spreading, especially in the IIT, IIM community. Thiaga's going to go, Thiaga's going to go. So I had to keep reinforcing that I'm not going anywhere till after you finish. I may or may not go. As it turned out, it worked out very well for me because not only did I stay long enough, I think it was over 30 days, not only did I sell the companies all, they all got guarantees. I declined my offer of employment because I thought maybe I'll consider one of the other. Immediately, the buyer came back to me and paid me a handsome amount of money to sign a non-compete, non-solicit and walk away. So I got paid to walk away what I would have got paid had I stayed, right? So I got the best of all worlds. I didn't have to stay where I didn't want to stay. I didn't go to work anywhere because the markets, it turned out, got worse and worse for 2 years after that. I didn't know that it was going to get that bad. The markets continued to deteriorate for 2 years after the bankruptcy. And I got paid to sit at home and spend time with my children, who were at that time, slightly under 3 years old and about slightly under 2 years old. And I got more time with them in that enforced gardening leave, as they call it, than I had in their lives till then, right? But the outcome was beyond my control. The outcome was sheer luck. But the ability to react in 10 or 15 minutes, I think, even that's a limited ability. I didn't know how to react when I thought the world was melting. And just to put that in context, 10 years after the bankruptcy was declared, 10 years, 2018, September 15th, the estate of Lehman Brothers still had a balance sheet with $50 billion of assets in it and unresolved claims. That's how long it took to unwind the bankruptcy, right? Under restructuring, at the end of 10 years, there was still $50 billion worth of assets. To put that in context, the biggest bankruptcy in the world before Lehman was Enron. Remember Enron? Yeah, the Texas energy company. Enron's bankruptcy, 2001, 2002, the total balance sheet of Enron was 60 billion. Lehman's bankruptcy, 2008, was 600 plus billion, right, on the balance sheet and trillions of derivative risk. And after 10 years, it was still so much money that it was like Enron left to resolve after 10 years, right? So imagine what would have happened had we liquidated, right? So that's one of the things I was saying here, is that regulators can never keep up with evolutions in the market and technology. The system is always ahead of the regulation. The more we are cognizant of that and we try and build networks and bridges with the innovating community, the markets, the more we can reduce the lag. But we will always be laggard. We can never keep up the regulatory and policy framework to the level of the cutting edge of innovation or evolution of markets, right? So that contingency, not only they didn't understand, I had no. To be fair, if you tell me the world is ending because from tomorrow there's going to be no electricity, I'm not sure how I would react to that. But I can certainly tell you my ability to react to crises, my resilience, is much, much, much higher after going through the Lehman bankruptcy than it was before. And my ability to go through the Lehman bankruptcy was much, much higher because I had been at the Twin Towers on September 11th and seen the notion of impermanence of everything and crises. So, every one of these experiences shapes you. So going back to the whole point, I would say the more you know yourself, the more you use every experience, failure or success, to keep kind of introspecting and evolving in your thinking about yourself, about others, about the world, the better off you'll be.
Could you introduce your kids to us since you mentioned them?
Yeah?
Yeah, I just want.
I have two boys. My older boy is called Palani. He's 18 years old, going to be 19 soon. He's going to study humanities in Australia. My younger boy is called Vale. Both of them named after my father, who was called Palanivel. He's 17. He just turned 17. And he's in 11th class in high school. And he says he wants to study the biological sciences. Not medicine, but the biology, maybe biotech, biochem, something.
Okay. And sir, something that one piece of advice or something that you want to tell our young audience? Sir?
Well, I think what I've found in life is almost nothing is permanent, right? Death is permanent. Everything else is temporary. All successes are fleeting. Some would say, as they say in old Greek philosophy, that the seeds of your next defeat are already sown in the throes of this victory. And no failure, almost no failure is irredeemable, right? Everybody gets knocked down. Nobody's life is continuous success. The ability to deal with success without getting overconfident and work through failure without getting disheartened or depressed probably is the single greatest variable in how far you can go in your life.